Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg. And, yeah. So, this is going to be the Gen Con special. All about my trip to Gen Con 2017, the 50th year anniversary. And, this week was, obviously a very different week for as far as the channel is concerned. I only had the one video, a Morrowind video, but things are going to get back to normal now. I'm not leaving home for many moons. But, you know, exceptions had to be made for Gen Con. So Gen Con, if you don't know, is a... I think I explained this last week, but it's a board game and RPG convention that really is also kind of just a nerd convention. It really, if you are any form of a nerd at all, in any way, shape, or form, there's going to be some events that you would be interested in at Gen Con, because there are thousands of things to do at Gen Con. It's really insane. Like, if you're the type of nerd and you don't want to talk to another human being and all you want to go do is, like, read manga in a room, there's an event for that. You don't have to talk to anybody. Like, I walked past a room and they're all just sitting in there silently reading manga. You can do that at Gen Con. You can watch anime in a room together with other people and watch anime and talk about it. You can do that. There's, you know, dance content. I walked past a room and there was like a bunch of like hot chicks dancing. I'm like, what are you doing at Gen Con? I don't know. It's Gen Con. There's just something for everybody. It's crazy. They weren't in like costume that I saw. It was like it seemed like almost like a I don't know. I wanted to stick around, but I had things to do. I'm a nerd. I can't do that. It's massive. Okay, there is something for everybody. There are parts of Gen Con that I don't even know about, and I'll probably never know about because I stick to sort of the mainstream stuff. And there are dark corners of Gen Con where God knows what goes on. Bullshit. So before we really get into it, let me just say that Gen Con is wonderful. It really is. There are rough spots, and really traveling anywhere and being anywhere for a few days, something bad is probably going to happen. It's just inevitable. But Gen Con, the whole trip, it's really just a wonderful place to be. I think the nerdier you are, the better time you'll probably have, just because you're among like-minded individuals. And pretty much every single person that I interacted with was pretty much, very friendly, cool, nice people, share very similar interests. A lot of people, at least in the board gaming universe of things, we all enjoy board games. We have knowledge of board. It's just a really good community. At one point, Studs forgot a board game. Like, he left it behind and he didn't realize till he got back to the hotel. And this is in a convention of 75,000 people or something like that. And so we thought, okay, for sure it's gone. But he called up and apparently someone immediately took it to Lost and Found. And that's just like, well, that's Gen Con. Anywhere else, I'd really probably question it. I'd assume it's gone, but Gen Con, there's just a lot of good people there. At least in my limited experience. So, if you live in the U.S., you know, in some sort of reasonable distance of Indianapolis, I highly recommend checking it out. Even if you're not super into board games, that doesn't matter. If you're not super into RPGs, there's something for you at Gen Con, and it's just a fun time. Like, if you don't know how to play any game whatsoever, there are people that would be more than willing to show you and be quite friendly about it. And I'll be there. So, there you go. So, Gen Con then, this year. We rode up on Wednesday this year. Last year we went up on Thursday. We realized that was a mistake because we wanted to be there Thursday morning for the opening of the exhibitors hall, so we can get the hot new games right off the bat. You arrive any later than Thursday morning, really there's no guarantee that you'll get what you want. It depends on the publisher, it depends on the game. Sometimes they only bring like 60 copies, in which case even Thursday morning you might not get it. Sometimes they'll just have an abundance of the things and you'll go on Saturday and you can get it. But it's really hard to say, and unless you go on Thursday morning is your best bet for picking up something. So really, ideally, we would have left Wednesday afternoon. In future years, we will probably be leaving Wednesday afternoon, but lack of communication caused us to leave at 6 p.m. on Wednesday. It's about a 4.5-hour drive from where we are, so we ended up getting there, well, I mean, we stopped for dinner, we got some Panda Express, and when we got to Indianapolis, we decided to go to the convention center first, because unless you have them mail you your badges and tickets, which cost money, you have to go to will call and you have to pick it up yourself, which is what it seems most people do.
Very well, then take note.
And so we got to Indianapolis at like 1 a.m. And we're like, okay, we'll just go to will call right now, 1 a.m. We'll just pick up our badges real quick. That'll be a lot better than going tomorrow morning. Well, it seems that plenty of other people had that exact same idea. And so there was probably about 100 people there or so when we got there. It definitely seemed like that Gen Con was kicking off. There were people rushing around and the BO was up in the air, and yeah, it was magical. But we got our badges, we got our tickets, everything was good to go. We go over to the hotel. Okay, so there is a thing in America. I don't think most people know about it. None of my friends knew about it, because it's really just for businesses. It's called CLC, which I think is Corporate Lodging Card. And it's this program that for between businesses and hotels for frequent travelers for business purposes. So if you work for a business and you travel around the country a lot, you have a CLC card. And so the business books the hotel room using CLC. The traveler shows up, shows the CLC card with their name on it, blah blah blah. And then the hotel just basically direct bills it to the CLC account holder. And the big thing then is the CLC provides a massive discount to the hotel room. In this case, it would be normally, since it's Gen Con, they're packed full, they were charging like $150 a night or something like that. Whereas with CLC, we got it for about $70 a night. It's a pretty massive discount. Now, obviously, myself, I would not have any knowledge of CLC, but the family business, they do a lot of traveling around the country for craft shows and things like that. So we do have CLC accounts, and I was signed up as part of the program because I used to work. I still kind of work for the business. And so we did this last year as well. Worked out pretty well, pretty nice. So we did it this year. So we booked 2 rooms under CLC. Again, reducing it from like 150 to 70 per night. Which is pretty good. It means that for the 3 nights, they were sharing rooms, so they only had to pay like 120 for the 3 nights, which is pretty nuts. Me, of course, being difficult, I wanted to get like a nicer room, a bigger room with a table, because I wanted a table for us to play some games on instead of just always playing in the big gigantic gaming hall, which we did end up playing, a bit in the gaming hall, just because you're at Gen Con, you're not going to leave and come back or anything like that. You're going to spend some time in the gaming hall to play some games, but I wanted the suite for that purpose. So that I guess, I don't even remember when we booked it, but for whatever reason, that could not be CLC. So I had to book that separately, just normally. Okay, so it all seemed good. We were all ready to go. So we get to the hotel, and I'm like, I got reservations for blah, blah, blah. And so the guy just kind of like stares at me for a little bit, and then he's just like, no CLC. And I'm like, no CLC. And he's like, no CLC. And I'm like, well, we booked it under CLC. And so then he goes into like how he was on the phone with his boss for like hours trying to make this work or something like that. And he's like, when the hotel is booked full, we can't do CLC, which is obviously utter bullshit. And it's like it just wouldn't work, which is, as far as I'm aware, is unheard of. It didn't happen last year, even though I know the hotel was booked full. He said it was specific to this hotel, but either you have an agreement with CLC or you don't, in which case you shouldn't allow people to book. Holy shit. Shouldn't allow people to book the hotel rooms with CLC, blah, blah, blah. And so at that point, it was like 2 a.m. or something like that. And I was just like, I'm not going to sit here and just like argue for an hour, blah, 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 and just pay him whatever. And then tomorrow I'll talk to my aunt and we'll sort it out. But Studs got up there. And he's just like, well, if you agreed to charge a certain amount when the booking occurred, you're obligated to, preserve that price. which isn't exactly how CLC works, because when we book under CLC, they show us the minimum rate, and then we end up getting charged our actual rate, which is a little bit higher, blah, blah, blah. But whatever. He said what he said. And so the guy at the counter is like, well, who are you? As if, you know, Studs was just like some random concerned stranger that was like passing by and trying to help out. It's like, no, he's part of this whole process. And so Studs is just like trying to, you know, explain this to the guy that, you know, if the hotel agreed to a rate, agreed to a process, agreed to CLC, they are sort of honor bound or whatever to keep that price. And so the guy just says, well, you know, you're being aggressive right now, which is very surreal. It's just a really surreal thing to. I really didn't know what to think. I was tired, and it was very odd because it was really the most calm that I've ever seen Studs, especially given the situation. Fuck. Stop it. Fuck. Yeah. So anyways, you know, we're like, well, okay, what's the rate difference between CLC and what you're planning to charge us? And he's like, well, it would go from like 60 to 150. Which is a significant jump, as I said. And so I'm not sure exactly how it came up. I don't feel like I mentioned it. Because he mentioned sort of the upgraded room, the suite. I'm going to be honest. I don't remember how it came up. I didn't think any of us mentioned it. I thought he mentioned it first, which meant that he's, like, backpedaling. I don't think we mentioned it. But he was like, the suite... He's like, I can do CLC for the 2 rooms, but not for the upgraded room. Which is then when I'm like, okay, well, that's what the agreement was, what we intended to do. And he's just like, okay. Like, I don't know, he didn't seem like relieved that we suddenly worked it out or something. It seemed like he was compromising or something like that. And so we thought maybe he was talking the whole time that he couldn't do CLC on the suite. But the fact that he said the price would go from 60 to 150 means that none of that was true, because that was very specific to the regular rooms. So we end up doing exactly what we planned to do with the rooms, and everything seemed fine. Blah blah blah. So I give him my Discover card, and everything works out. We get our hotel, we get our room keys, and we move on. So I get up to my room, and I'm up there for like 5 minutes before I get a notification on my phone that a charge was declined on my credit card. Why do I fucking suck at this? Anyways, so I get I get a notification that a charge was declined, which was not the hotel's fault. That was my fault. I was dumb. I didn't think it would be a big deal. So I get a phone call like 20 seconds later from the same guy who's like, oh, you know, your card was declined, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I'll be right down with another card. I go down there. I give him a Visa, right? And it goes, he takes it in the back. He comes back a little later, and he's like, okay, you're all set, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, finally, I'm done. Let me just get some damn sleep. So, head back up to my room. It actually takes me a little while to get to bed. I'm still just a little flushed and all this crap, and just finally get to sleep. Suddenly, before I know it, I'm woken up by a phone call from the hotel room phone, like a foot away from my ear. It's very loud. It's very sudden. I'm just thrown out of sleep. And I look over to the clock, and it's 5:15 a.m. And I'm just like, oh, God. And like, what the hell is going on? This is, again, surreal. And, in fact, I think that maybe I'm still dreaming. Like, maybe this is not reality. But I actually don't even answer the phone the first time. But of course it rings, you know, he calls a second time. So I'm like, all right, I guess this is reality. So I pick up the phone. I'm like, you know, yes. And the guy's like, it's the guy from downstairs. He's still there. And he's like, sorry to bother you. Which is not what you say when you call someone at 5:15 a.m. after you know they just got to bed at like 2:30 a.m. Sorry to bother you, but your MasterCard didn't go through. And I'm just like, well, I didn't give you a MasterCard. And he's like, right, well, you gave me the Discover, and I'm like, yes, and that didn't go through. And then I'm like, and then I gave you a Visa. And he's like, right, well, that didn't go through either. At this point, I'm thinking either this guy's just fucking with me, or I don't know, I've been like the target of some sort of enemy of the state process, and people are just like, you know, they zeroed out all my credit card, you know, who knows what. I don't even know what's going on. I still might be dreaming. And so he's like, can I just check the number on this card? And I'm like, fine. Like, what else am I gonna say? Because he's like, you know, I need to close this out before I can leave my shift and all that. And I'm like, I'm just thinking, okay, so that means, you know, when I gave him my Visa before I went to bed, he didn't actually do anything with it. He like wrote down the number and like the security code and stuff, but he didn't actually do anything. Great, buddy. Thank you. I'm so glad you decided to wait until now to make this work. So I have to turn on the light, I have to get my wallet, I have to get my card, and I read off the number to the man, to the thing. And he's like, yep, that's what I got. And then he's like, and the expiration date is blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yep. And then I'm just like, I honestly have no idea why it wouldn't go through. I really had no idea. And so he's like, all right, let me just check one more time. So he reads off the number to me. And he says 1361 at the end. And I'm like, 16. He's like, huh? 1316. He's like, oh. Oh, I see. Thank you. Sorry to bother you. And I'm like, of course. And I just hang up. At that point, I kind of pretty much thought he was fucking with me. I don't know how one person could just do this unintentionally. And so then I was like actually worried, like, am I gonna just be thrown out of this hotel? Like, what is gonna happen? What could possibly happen now? And so I ended up not getting any more sleep after that. I stayed up, and I just had to watch the George Lopez show, and that was the rest of my evening. There was no more sleep for me. Because I was just so worried that I was going to get another phone call, and I wasn't going to be able to do anything about it. This guy was in control of my life right now. So I ended up getting about 3 hours of sleep the first night. I didn't get any more phone calls, so I was happy about that, but still, that was a rough night, I'll be honest. But anyways, moving on. Thursday morning, then we got some breakfast at Subway. I'd never had Subway breakfast. It was all right. And we ended up being later to the convention center that morning than I would have liked, because we did not realize how hard traffic would be Thursday morning with everyone rushing over there at the same time, which again makes sense. So we kind of had to rush over to the entrance to the exhibitors hall so we could stand in line and rush in with everybody else. They said that if they saw anybody running at all, they would immediately take away your badge, and that would be the end of it, which is pretty severe. 4-day badge is not cheap, so it definitely discourages running quite a bit. Getting in there, the only thing I really cared about was getting to the Fantasy Flight booth, because I wanted to pick up some Arkham Horror card game expansions, and I had heard, like, just yesterday or something like that, the TI-4 was actually for sale there, which blew my mind, and like, nobody actually expected that, I don't think. And I was like, alright, TI-4's there, I'll buy it, I'll get it. But yeah, it was pretty much all I cared about. There were some other games around the show that I had heard about, and if it was like, if it's there on the shelf for purchase, I'll get it. The only other one that I was really interested in was Wasteland Express delivery service. I was like, I'm gonna try to get to the Fantasy Flight booth, but I'm way too far in the back. It's never gonna happen. And sure enough, the door's open. We get in there way too late. Walk over to the Fantasy Flight booth. And the line, oh my god, the line. It's a small booth that they have, alright? It's probably like, I don't know, maybe slightly larger than my bedroom, I guess. It's not a huge booth. But they have the good stuff, so it's worth going there. And so they have basically a line outside of the booth, and they only let in a certain amount of people at a time to do their shopping, which is probably for the best. But the line, oh my god, like, I think people said it was like a 2-hour wait Thursday morning on average, which is insane. Like, that's so much time. There's not, Gen Con is not a long event, you know, it's 3 good days, and if you really want to stay for Sunday, you can have an okay 4th day, I guess. But really, it's 3 days, 2 hours of prime time. That's rough. That's very rough, because there are a lot of other good games to check out. So, yeah, Studs and I saw the line, and we're just like, all right, screw that. We're not doing that. So we headed over to the Cool Mini or Not booth, which generally has some good stuff. They're getting bigger and bigger as a company. They're not just doing miniatures anymore, so they have they're starting to become one of the bigger ones. I guess they are one of the bigger ones. And so we headed over there. We stood in line for maybe like half an hour or something like that, which is not great, but it's acceptable. Shit. And so we get in there, and I did not know of any game that I was really interested in here, but they usually have something good. Damn it. Way too damn thirsty. So I look around, and I don't really see anything that grabs my eye. Maybe, like, Massive Darkness or whatever, but it's like 120 bucks, and I'm not doing that sight unseen. But I didn't want to wait 30 minutes for nothing, which is not really a good mindset to have. I wanted to walk out with something. So I saw Ethno sitting there, which I think I had heard about and heard was good. And it seemed like a contender for something we could play at Gen Con, which is usually what you're kind of looking for there. You either want something that you're going to play at Gen Con, so it's worth picking it up now for the higher price, or it's something that you really want and it's not going to be available for like 4 or 5 months, which is not uncommon at Gen Con. They generally do that, where they have they like make early supply just for Gen Con, which is pretty cool. So anyways, I grabbed Ethnos, and that was that. I got a promo with it, and blah, blah, blah. The other games that I purchased that day, I did pick up Wasteland Express, which I did learn just today. I went through all the rules. Seems very cool. The theme is very Borderlands in style. It's, it's post-apocalyptic Mad Mask kind of stuff, but it's way over the top, and all the characters are just ridiculous. The art style is just insane, and so the theming is pretty integrated to all that. But the mechanics are, you have like this truck, and you can buy upgrades for your truck, and you're going around to different parts of this wasteland, and you're picking up cargo, and you're fighting raiders, and you're delivering cargo, and the prices of the cargo like fluctuate, so it's kind of an economic style game. But you have to deal with raiders, and there's events that happen, and you're trying to complete like objectives, and some of the objectives are just like, well, deliver 3 weapons to this place or something like that, but some of them are like really wild and zany and stuff. Seems like a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Massive game though, very, very heavy, very expensive, but looks like a lot of fun. Very American. What else did I pick up? We hit up the Asmodee booth. I got a Time Stories expansion, Lumen Fide, I think it's what it's called. Fuck. Oh, that was lucky. I don't know how that one happened. That was bad. Damn it. I picked up... I thought I picked up 2 things at Asmodee. Oh, I picked up an Unlock game, which is kind of a new fad in board gaming. Just like escape rooms are kind of a new fad. It's an escape room-esque board game. where it's a single use. You buy it once, you play it once, you're done. They're about 15 bucks. They last an hour for up to 6 people, which, I mean, for me, for one person to spend 15 bucks for an hour is not a great deal. There really isn't like a sharing of payment, at least not in our group. I mean, if everyone I played with wanted to chip in $2, that would be good, but I don't think I'd demand that. But yeah, it's an hour or maybe a little less depending if you're good, and it's like a single deck of cards. It's kind of Time Stories-esque in style, but you're trying to just like solve a series of puzzles, and you can rip up the cards and you're writing on cards, and the whole game is through the cards and maybe like a side pen and piece of paper. So yeah, it's meant to kind of be an escape room in a box. There are a number of different companies doing that, but I saw the ones in the Asmodee booth, and I'm like, okay, it's right here, it's cheap, let's try it. I was hoping to get it played at the con, but we'll get it eventually. I think that's about it. Until later on, I finally made it back to the Fantasy Flight booth. Ziggy and I stood in line for, I want to say, 45 minutes. And the way they were doing it was that while you were standing in line, they had this like they had these guys with boxes full of little cards. And so if they had a card and you got the card for a game, you were guaranteed to get that copy. You were guaranteed to get a copy of the game. So for every copy of the game that they had there, they had a card that you could get. I guess that's how it worked. I mean, I'm sure some people took a card and then left and lost it or something. But anyways, yeah. So when we went in to stand in line, they still had cards for Twilight Imperium 4 and the Arkham Horror Path to Carcosa expansion, which was the two things that I really wanted, so I was very happy. Because I could just grab those cards and stand in line, and I know that I'm going to get those games, which is good. That's very good. I'm glad they have that system. If they had Legend of the Five Rings in stock, I probably would have picked it up, but I'm okay not having it. I don't really need any more two-player games. Come on, man. So yeah, we stood in line, went in there. I grabbed 2 other Arkham Horror expansions, little packs for the Dunwich Legacy or whatever it's called, that I did not own, but they were sitting right there, and I figured I'm throwing money around, I might as well grab them. I went up, got my TI-4, got my Path to Carcosa, everything a man needs, and away we go. An important lesson, though, for Gen Con. If you do happen to attend and you are looking to purchase board games, some board games are quite heavy. Some may say excruciatingly heavy. Especially depending on the bag. If you have a smaller game that's like compact and heavy and you have a backpack, that's not too bad. But if you have a game like TI-4 and they give you like a paper bag with like strings for handles and you have to carry that around all day, you will end up with blood coming from your hands, pretty much. Yeah, I had 2 very heavy games, TI-4 and Wasteland Express. I don't know what they weigh, but definitely over 10 pounds each. And, yeah, they're heavy. And unless you have somewhere to drop them off, which, I mean, yeah, you can take them back to your car, but sometimes your car is really out of the way, and it's just a big pain in the ass, and you end up carrying the bags around, and it's painful. It's painful. So, either, you know, have a plan in store for dealing with heavy games if you go to Gen Con. Or, you know, buy them at the end of the night, but that's not really feasible because the exhibitors hall closes before Gen Con. Like, the exhibitor hall closes at, like, I don't know, 4 or 6 or something like that. Anyways. Okay, so Thursday, the only event we had was the True Dungeon 101. So I guess I will talk about True Grind a little bit. Okay, so there's this, there's an event at Gen Con. I want to say it's been there for like, I think 15 years or something like that. It's grown every single year. It's called True Dungeon. It's not a LARP, okay? It's not a LARP because there's really no role play necessary at all. It is a game / experience. It kind of combines elements of an escape room with D&D and shuffleboard. The actual True Dungeon itself is a series of rooms that you have to progress through within a time limit, and each room is going to have either or both a puzzle element and a combat element. Sometimes it'll just be, you know, a puzzle, sometimes it'll just be combat or blah blah blah. And the puzzle can vary, you know, it can be like traditional type escape room style stuff, or it can be sort of, you know, really D&D themed types. Yeah, I don't know. It can be all sorts of puzzles. You can imagine, I'm sure. And they'll have elements of, like, they'll turn off the lights, or you'll have to, like, crawl on your hands and knees. You know, there's, like, physical elements to it. There's obstacles. It's a dungeon. I'm gonna die. Oh, yeah. And the combat portion of True Dungeon is... the rules behind it are all based on D&D 3.5 edition, but the actual mechanics of it are pretty much shuffleboard. Pretty much you are sliding this little token down a board and trying to land it on this, like, picture of a monster. And the monster has, like, hitboxes. So if you slide your token into, like, his head region, that's like a crit. Whereas if you slide it into his leg, that's like rolling an 11 or something on a d20. So basically, you're doing the slide to simulate rolling a die, but it's supposed to be more exciting than that. Or more involved than that, I guess. And so you go in there with 10 people, and it's built for 10 people, so you might have half the group working on the puzzle and the other half working on killing the monster at the same time. And you're under a strict time limit of like 12 minutes per room, so everybody needs to work fairly quick. And going in there, you're given, you have to select a character, you have to select a class, and so they have, you know, Bard, Barbarian, Ranger, Fighter, Cleric, Paladin, blah, blah, blah. And the way that they handle loot and stats and stuff is pretty much every character is level 4, but if you get good enough loot or something like that, you can upgrade your character to level 5. But for now, that's it. That's you're either 4 or 5. Fuck. Why is this pairing so slow? And loot is represented by these little tokens. They're basically poker chips. And when you do your first true dungeon, you get a set of 10 of these tokens randomly. 7 of them are like commons, 2 of them are uncommons, and you get 1 rare. And they also have like legendary tokens and, you know, varying degrees of quality and usefulness and blah blah blah. And so most of it is basically in the form of like booster pet. You get random pulls, and you don't really know what kind of loot you're gonna get. You hope it's good, but it might probably gonna be trash. And so all these tokens represent like a plus 2 drow long blade or you know, boots of foresight, or you know, all D&D type loot. You know, every token is its own piece of loot. And so when you first do True Dungeon, your character is pretty shit, right? You get these 10 pieces of loot, but it's just going to be this grab bag, and your one class is not going to be able to probably use all 10 pieces, and so you're going to maybe trade them away or blah, blah, blah. But your character's not going to be great, but basic True Dungeon is not meant to be very difficult. For that reason, it's meant for beginners. Okay? But as you do True Dungeon, you can do different difficulties, where they, you know, increase the difficulty of the combat encounters and things like that. And you have the chance of getting more loot for completing it, which makes sense. It's like Diablo or something like that. So that's all well and good. And so you might ask, well, Mangg, how was True Dungeon? Well, we didn't do True Dungeon. Wow, what? When does that... Come on. We did not do True Dungeon. No. Because we were a few hours late to ordering tickets this year, which is... I mean, it was technically all of our responsibilities, but I guess I'll take the blame. I am the Gen Con man. I'm in charge of it. So I'll take responsibility for us being late. I just forgot about it. I need to set like an alarm on my phone next year. So a few hours in, when all the True Dungeon tickets were sold out, because they go instantly, I went on to check, and the only thing left was True Grind. True Grind is a separate event from True Dungeon. It's held at the same sort of location, but it is completely separate in every other way from True Dungeon. True Grind is... Okay, well, it's represented to be literally just the combat portion of the True Dungeon. They take away all of the sort of the environments. They take away all the puzzles. You're literally just going in there and doing the combat shuffleboard portion for an hour, monster after monster after monster, and it's difficult. It's not for beginners. This was mentioned to us many times when we got to Gen Con. But the actual event page itself said that to do True Grind, you must have either played your True Dungeon before or gone through the True Dungeon 101 seminar to teach you how to play True Dungeon. And so back in, I don't know when that was, March or something like, whenever we agreed and we picked out our events. Maybe that was May. You know, we discussed True Grind. I explained to them what it was going to be. It was going to be a lot of combat. It's combat hack fest and blah, blah, blah. But we read the fact that, okay, all you need to do is run through the 101 seminar. Which was, they still had tickets available. We could just do that the day before. And so we figured, well, you know, it's a chance for us to do something in the true dungeon-esque type thing. It's not the actual true dungeon, but it's half the price, and it gives us, you know, something to try out. And we can do the 101, and we'll be fine. So on and so forth. And so we decided to sign up for it. Now, at the time, I figured it would not actually end up being a good experience. I didn't really say that, but I did not have high hopes for that event. I didn't really think they would like it. Because I was fairly certain that it was nothing. Well, here's really the main thing that clued me in. This is mainly what I focused on. The fact that every true dungeon event sold out instantly, and by the time we got to it, there are only true grind events left over. That probably tells you it's not going to be great. But, you know, it was something to do. They were willing to do it, so we signed up. And, so anyways, before we get to that, we had to do the True Dungeon 101 seminar. So we go to that, which was pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, it was really not that informative or educational. It really just ended up being humorous to us, because the whole seminar was about True Dungeon, and so they were talking about, you know, doing puzzles and teamwork, and they were preparing us for, like, crawling on our hands and knees, and teamwork and all this kind of stuff, which none of it was really relevant to us. And they did mention True Grind once. They were just like, yeah, True Grind, not for beginners. It's not for you guys. You know, it's just combat after combat, and yeah, it's not for beginners. And we're just chuckling and be like, oh my god. And so, yeah, the seminar was probably a waste of time, but it was like free, and it was funny. So yeah, our Thursday didn't involve too much, just getting some food and hanging out. I think we played a few games. One of my friends ended up buying a game. It's funny, every year he goes to Gen Con, he buys one game. He goes off on his own when we get there, and he buys one game and he brings it back. And every time it just makes me laugh, because last year it was Sulkin, which was his first board game he ever purchased. And Sulkin is like, for one, it was not new, which was amusing to me, because he went to Gen Con, he bought his first game, it wasn't even new. But that's not the word. You don't have to buy only new games or anything like that. But it was also kind of like a heavier, more complicated Euro game. And that was his first board game he ever bought, and it's just like, it was so random. He just comes back holding Sulkin. I'm like, what? I would have never thought that, yeah. This year he comes back with J'accuse. And I had heard of J'accuse, but I had heard very little about it, which is usually not a good thing. I've either not heard of a game, in which case I really can't make much of a judgment, or I've heard of a game plenty, in which case, you know, it's probably pretty solid. But when I've heard of a game, but I know almost nothing about it, that's where you get scary. Then it could just be some unknown pile of trash, which is what J'accuse was. Because I looked it up, and it was ranked 9,962 on Board Game Geek, which is very low. And the only reason he purchased it was because the woman at the booth was just like explaining it to him, and he said that, you know, she made it sound like right up our alley. It's like, well, yeah, that's their job. So we played J'accuse, and yeah, it was a big pile of trash. It became kind of a running joke. it was kind of like, it was meant to be like a bluffing type game where you're trying to pass the blame and pass accusations and stuff like that, but really it just was kind of like a random thing with really little talking necessary. I don't know, it just did not click with us, and apparently plenty of other people that ranked it very low. Played Secrets, which I think was from Asmodee, which was a similar type game of... Actually, I mean, there was not really bluffing involved. It was just kind of like hidden roles, and it was decent. It wouldn't really be something I'd own, but I don't mind playing it. What else? I think that... Oh, they played Viral, I think, while I was learning... While I was unpunching TI4 and Wasteland Express. Anyways, Thursday night was the coup tournament, and I was like, okay, I'm definitely getting screwed on this tournament. I'm on like 3 hours of sleep. It's 10 p.m. This is not good. This is not a good time for me to have a tournament. So Coup, C-O-U-P, is a game. It's a simple card game. If you're unfamiliar with it, I'll give you a quick rundown of the rules, because it is relevant for this discussion. I know this is a long video, but it's a Gen Con special. So Coup is a game of... well, it's meant to be a game of bluffing and sort of hidden roles and outthinking your opponent, which is what it is when you play it casually. If you ever play in the national championships, however, it becomes a fairly different game. The bluffing aspect is heavily minimalized, I would say. At least in the finals... Oh, I guess I'm spoiling it. Shit. Alright, I spoiled a little bit. At least in the finals, almost everyone played it completely straight. I think one person did bluff about having a Duke, but other than that, honesty was the name of the game, and so it really just came down to outplaying your opponents. And really, this is me speaking, and I'm no expert. Well, I guess maybe I am. There is a bit of sort of playing the table, or playing the players. You know, you're trying to... At least my strategy was concerned, and my strategy did pretty well for myself. Was trying to appear as the smallest threat that you possibly can. Okay, so you're not trying to just bull rush everybody and run the table and own the whole shit. You want to be the last man standing. That's the goal of the game. And so you basically want to just be nobody until the last moment when you're somebody, and then you win. That was the general goal. In my experience, anybody that really tried to like run things, that tried to get a lot of money and tried to just take out everybody else, they always lost. But anyways, Coup is a game where you have six. Let me count. Hold on. Let me count. 5. It's 5. There are 5 different roles. What do I know? There are 5 different roles. There's the Assassin, Ambassador, Captain, Contessa, and Duke. Okay. And each one of those roles has a specific action associated with them that they can do. Yes, Ziggy. That was a major flaw. You want to be the smallest person at the table. Ideally, when you're playing Coup, you want the other players to forget that you even exist. And so assassinating people, stealing from them, that kind of stuff is just That's the opposite of what you want to do. Anyways, so there's 5 different roles. At the start of the game, you get given 2 cards. Each card has one of the roles written on it. And so on your turn, of course, you can do one of the actions associated with one of your 2 roles. So if you have the Duke card, you can use the Duke action to take 3 coins from the middle of the table, from the supply. If you have the Captain card, you can use the Captain to try and steal 2 coins from someone else around the table. If you have the Ambassador, you can take 2 cards from the central deck of cards, look at all 4 of your cards, and put 2 back in the middle of the deck. So you basically, you know, have the option of getting 2 new cards, or 1 and 1, or just keeping the same stuff you've got, but nobody really knows what exactly is going on with you. If you have the Assassin, you can pay 3 coins to try and kill off somebody. And the Contessa does not have an action associated with her, but she blocks an assassin. So if you have the Contessa, you do not, you can avoid being assassinated. Now the real key part of coup, however, is the fact that you can pretend to be any of the roles at any time. So even though I do not have a Duke card, I can say that I'm using the Duke card to take 3 coins from the center of the table. And it's up to anyone else around the table to decide if they want to challenge you and say that you do not have the Duke card. In which case, if you have the card, you show it to them, and they lose a card. So they have to flip over a card permanently, and they are down 1 health, pretty much. If you were lying, you do not have the card, you have to lose a card permanently. So you lose a health. So once you've lost 2 health, you've lost both your cards, they're both face up. You are out of the game. Yes, the Ambassador or the Captain can also block someone stealing from you with the Captain. So if someone's trying to steal from you with the Captain, you can just say, well, I'm blocking with my Ambassador, even if you don't have the Ambassador. And it's up to them if they want to decide. You know, it's up to anybody else if they want to decide that you don't actually have an Ambassador. Challenges can be powerful, but in the championships, it's very rarely used. I think I only called somebody out once. Even when I did it, I felt it was risky, but that was in, like, the 2nd round, so I took the risk. It ended up paying off. They did not have the Duke, and I felt pretty good. But anyways. So that's pretty much coup. The only other thing, really, is the fact that you're trying to get money, because once you have 7 or more coins, you can spend 7 of them in order to coup someone, in which case they cannot block it and they have to lose a card. They lose a health. If you have 10 or more coins at any time on your next turn, you are forced to coup. You cannot just keep hoarding coins. So yeah, it's a game of decisions. You know, you really have like 1 action on your turn, and that action determines quite a bit sometimes. Whether you take 3 coins, whether you take 1 coin, whether you try to steal 2 coins, whether you're ambassadoring, you try and assassinate somebody, and then you have to, like, who am I going to assassinate? You know, who's the best target? You know, deciding who the valuable targets are and who's not, and blah, 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 blah. It's a game that, I guess, for a long time, I assumed was just completely random, for the most part. I never really felt at all confident about my ability at coup. It seemed like just, it's anybody's game. You put 5 people at a table and, you know, just roll a die, pretty much. For the most part, I mean, there is some knowledge required. There are some tactics that can be utilized, but it seems like a pretty random game. That, combined with running on 3 hours of sleep, I did not put my chances of doing well in the tournament very high. The first round, then, the way that they did it, there was about... Let's see, there was 9 tables. I think 7 of them had 6 people. Which is... some form of math. There were 7 tables of 6 people and 2 tables of 5 people. So however many people that is. That's how many were in the tournament. So they were doing 9 tables, then they was getting down to 4 tables of 6, followed by 2 tables of 6, and then 1 table of 6. And the winner of the final table was the winner of the championship. From each table during the first round, they were taking 2 winners. So once you won 1 round, you sat out, and then the winner of the second round went on to the next round from that table. So that's how it narrowed down to 4. Then from those 4 tables, they were taking 3 winners. And then from the next 2 tables, they were taking 3 winners, so the final table had 6. So pretty much you had to win 4 games of coup in order to win the championship, so which doesn't seem like much, but again, the game is fairly random, so it's not that easy. And, so the 5 of us went in there and we decided that we were all going to sit at different tables so that we could all meet each other in the grand finals, which seemed like a solid plan. And even the runners of the tournament said that, you know, do not sit with people you know, your friends, your family, blah, blah, blah. Because that is unfair. It definitely is. If 2 people know each other and they're sitting at the table, there's just a better chance that, you know, why would I coup my buddy? I want him to keep going in the tournament, so I'll just coup this other guy. You know, it's unfair. It's best if no one knows each other. So the first round, pretty much came down to kind of, I want to say, social engineering. Basically, it came down to 3 of us in the first round, and the one guy basically became a kingmaker. We all were ready to coup, and so he had to decide who would kill him, pretty much. So whichever person he cooed would be out of the game, and then the next person in line would coup him, leaving them the winner. So it was up to that guy to coup either me or one other guy, and so really I just put on my best pouty face. I was like puffing up my cheeks a little bit. I was trying to appear as innocent as possible. Said nothing. I made, you know, just glancing eye contact. I just really wanted to appear like a gentle lamb. Or so I thought. It worked out. He didn't pick me. He cooed the other guy. So I was like, alright, that's how it's done. You just gotta appear real innocent-like. Now, it ended up that the guy that he did end up cooing won the second game. So we both went on as winners. But still. Round 1 win is pretty nice. So, moving on to the next, the 4 tables, the second round. I was starting to feel a little pressure because I was like, all right, you know, winning the first round. Now I'm dealing with all people that have won the game, and 2 of my friends got knocked out the first round, Thomas and Phil. Ziggy and Studs and I all went on to the second round. We continued to sit at different tables to make it fair. During the second round of the tournament, the first game, throughout that whole game, pretty much, I was claiming to be the Duke, and I actually was the Duke. So, like I said, I played it very honestly throughout the whole tournament. So, throughout the whole game, you know, I'm doing Duke actions, I'm taxing occasionally, but I also take income. I take 1 coin instead of 3, which throws people off. They don't know what to think. It actually probably saved my butt. Sometimes take 3, sometimes take 1. Again, you'd want to be a little tiny threat. I would block 4 and aid with the Duke because he can do that. So I made it kind of known that I was a Duke, but I wanted to. Oh shit, I forgot about that. I wanted to spread a little doubt by taking 1 coin instead of 3 and maybe pretending that I don't have the Duke. So it comes down to me and one other guy. Because I had just cooed somebody. So he had 6 coins and I had 0. And I thought the game was done. I was going to have to, win the second game and keep going and blah, blah, blah. The game was pretty much done. He had me dead to rights. All he had to do was take 1 coin, and there was no way I was going to get to 7 before he could kill me. That would be impossible. So I thought I was done. And the guy next to me, who was kind of like a Jesse Cox looking dude, he's just like, oh, it's simple, man. You tax with your Duke, and then you assassinate him with your assassin. Now this is funny because I only have 1 card, right? I only have 1 health, so I can only have 1 of those rolls to actually be true. I either have the Duke or I have the assassin. I couldn't actually have both. So he said it very sarcastically, and everyone else at the table knew that he was being sarcastic. It was funny. We kind of chuckled, and I'm like, well, you're right. And so I took 3. I taxed with my Duke, and so this other guy sits there, and he's just like, he puts his hand on his forehead and he starts like staring at the table, and he's just like, oh, well, I mean, I gotta challenge one of them. Meaning he either has to challenge the fact that I took 3 with the Duke, so either challenge the fact that I don't actually have a Duke, or apparently when I plan to assassinate him, he has to challenge whether or not I have the assassin. And right then I'm thinking, like, is this guy for real? I thought he might be joking, but I kept a straight face. Because again, I had been duking throughout the entire game. I had never done any assassinations. And so, yeah, he was in a conundrum of whether or not to challenge me on whether or not I had a Duke, or challenge me on whether or not I had the assassin. Now, if he was wrong with the challenge, he loses the game. If he's right about the challenge, he wins the game. He could have not challenged me at all, in which case, if I had the assassin, he was dead. If I didn't have the assassin, he still won. Okay, so I guess in a complete vacuum, I suppose it's like a 50-50 all around, I guess. But coup is not a vacuum. You're meant to sort of read the information, read the table, read the players, keep track of what's going on, and he did not do that. So for him, it was a 50-50 coin flip. Apparently, he had no knowledge of me ever taxing. And so he sits there thinking for like a minute, and I had to keep a straight poker face for a whole minute without chuckling. It was tough. That was the toughest part of the tournament. And finally, he says, all right, I challenge. And so I just immediately flipped that Duke card, and I was like, holy shit, I could not believe it. Everybody else at the table just could not believe it, that this guy fucked up that royal. Like, that's legendary as far as coup is concerned. Legendary. So again, I got a game 1 win for the second round, and I got to continue on. I believe I think Ziggy lost in the second round. He did not get to go on, but Studs did win the second round. We both went on to the semifinals. Again, we sat at different tables on purpose. Third round, that was, again, starting to get even more stressful. It's like, all right, we're dealing with some good players now, or so I thought. And so I actually lose the first game. I was a little sad about that. The guy that I lost to first game did end up going on to Well, yeah, of course he went on to the finals. It was 3 winners from each table. He seemed pretty competent, so he deserved the game 1 win, I guess. So, second game, pretty much it comes down to, again, sort of a 3-man situation where I'm one of the 3 people. Oof. And one of the guys, he's an older guy, big mustache, and he did not seem like he belonged, I'll be honest. I'm not sure how he made it to the semifinals, but he just did not seem like he really belonged there. And so he kept trying to assassinate people. He tried to assassinate the guy to my left twice, and the guy to Contessa both times. Or he claimed to have a Contessa both times. I think the guy challenged him the second time because he's like, "No way, you still got to no way." He ambassador. Something happened. I'm not exactly. I don't remember, but he tried to assassinate him twice. He lost a card the second time. So he has 1 card left. Presumably he kept his assassin. So he tries to assassinate me. And I'm like, well, I blocked with my Contessa, which I actually had. So I figured he'd probably challenge me and he'd be done. But he did not challenge me. Instead, he just flipped over his assassin card. Because he thought that I, like, challenged him, that he didn't have the assassin or something. I don't know what he thought. But for some reason, he just flipped over the card. And for the championships, there was a rule that if you accidentally revealed a card, you lost that card. You lost that health. It was gone. And so, for him randomly flipping over his assassin, he just lost it, and he was out of the game. So, then it went to me next, and I had enough money to coup the last guy. I was really worried. Like, I thought I was going to lose the game again, because I was in this position again, where I was just shit luck. But that guy flipping over his card randomly gave me the game. Must have pissed off the other dude a whole hell of a lot. But yeah, he gave me the game pretty nicely. Jesus Christ. So yeah, I had the second game win of the semifinals, and I was moving on to the finals, which was pretty exciting. Studs, however, could not handle it. He choked, so he lost in the semifinals. And again, they were taking 3 winners from each table, so I figured the odds were pretty good, but he still just... In fairness, he had very little practice. We only played like 2 games of coup beforehand, whereas the rest of us had practiced for the last month or so. Every week. And so, moving on to the finals then, 6 of us, they gave every single finalist a free game. I think it was called Kodama or something like that. It was basically like some Princess Mononoke looking game. It looked pretty light. It wouldn't ever be anything I'd purchase, but I can always point to it and say, hey, I got that in the coup finals. And they also gave us all a used copy of coup that was used for the tournament, so a tournament copy of coup. And I already owned coup, of course. Everyone at that table owned coup, so it was an odd prize. But I gave it to Ziggy, so... free game. So the finals, it was winner take all, 1 single game of coup. If you were out, you were done. If you won the whole prize package, which consisted of about 4 or 5 games and a trophy. And that was it.
You should have waited.
And so the game continued on. Again, I continued using my strategy of minimalizing myself, making myself the smallest threat possible. I probably can't kill this guy. And so it came down to 3 people. Me, an older dude, like middle-aged guy, and a younger kid. And it ended up being that we all had enough money to coup, and it was my turn. Okay? Now, I did actually think that the guy next to me, the middle-aged guy, I actually thought that he had 6 coins instead of 7. I thought that I was screwed either way. In the end, it made 0 difference. It made 0 difference, but... I figured at the time... Well, actually, I figured it later. So, yeah, I cooed the kid. Because he had enough money right then. He was about to coup somebody. I figured I'll just coup him and be done with it. I thought the guy had 6, and I thought, okay, he's going to duke, and maybe I can call him on his Duke, even though I'm 90% sure he has it. I'm pretty sure I was done no matter what. I was like, later on then, I was like, okay, so what happened was I cooed the kid, and then the middle-aged guy cooed me, and he was the champion. I was the runner-up. All right, it's out there. I was a runner-up in the Coup National Championships. Huzzah. And so later on, I was like, okay, well, either in that moment, I could have either guaranteed myself to get second place, which is what I did, or if I had just, like, pretty much passed my turn, if I had taken just one coin or something like that, I would give the kid who was next in line, his turn was next, I was giving him the position of being the kingmaker. And either he had to decide to coup me or the other guy. If he cooed me, I was third place. If he cooed the guy, I would have gotten first place, right? He would be the kingmaker instead of me. So it was either guaranteed second place or maybe first place, maybe third place. Okay. And so I figured guaranteed second place is pretty good because second place is a lot better than third place. So I figured, all right, pretty much what I decided was if you made it to the finals table, you were good. If you made it to the finals at the coup tournament, you were a good coup player. Because one single game between 6 competent coup players, you cannot determine. I cannot say that guy was better than me at coup. And I would say, that kid can't say that I was better than him at coup. It's just, it's tough. It's tough. It's tough. One single game of coup between 6 good players. There's just shit happens. But the next day, when we were sitting around in like the gaming area. We were just playing something. We were playing TI4 or whatever, and we look over, and there is the coup grand champion, the middle-aged guy sitting there, and next to him is the kid who is his son. Haha! In which case, if I had passed my turn, of course the kid would not coup his father over some random stranger. So if I had passed, I would have been guaranteed third place. So I allowed myself to wipe out the kid. I don't know, like, if the way that the turn order was, I'm sure the dad probably would have been fine letting his son be champion. I think most dads would probably be okay with that. But for them to have engineered that, it would have looked real freaking shady. Like, it would have basically required the kid to make a move that he would never, ever make normally. I would have been like, what the fuck? So, I did not want to be beaten by some kid, so, yeah, coup the shit out of him. So yeah, it's a bummer because if Studs had made it into the finals with me, we would have had sort of a similar arrangement with one of us becoming the grand champion would have been very nice. But I was on my own. I had to be a maverick, and so second place, runner-up in the national championships. That's never a bad thing to say, I don't think. So yeah, all I got was the free game and the coup game that everyone else got. The middle-aged guy, and by extension, the kid, got all the other games. I mean, 2 of them were like Aeon's End and the expansion, and I already own Aeon's End, and I don't like it, so it's not a big problem. The trophy is of course always nice, but it was interesting. I never want to play coup again. I'm done with that game. I never want to do the tournament again because it's very slim chance I'll be champion. And so it's just, I don't want to go downhill. Retire while I'm ahead. Anyways, so that was the coup tournament. It was a good time, I guess. What else did we do? Oh man, this is gonna be like a 2-hour video. Let's see here. That was Thursday. That was just Thursday. I got 2 more days to go. Friday, we decided to kind of be casual because none of us had to rush over to get to the exhibitors hall, and so we got some breakfast at McDonald's, and we headed back to the hotel. We played Last Will. Studs ended up getting extremely upset because that's what he does, and then we had 1 o'clock event, Dice Tower Live, which is a very good event. I'm going to see that every year as long as they do it. So finally, we made it over there. We actually ended up being a little late. Not really. We had to rush a little bit, but we actually got great seats for Dice Tower Live, so it wasn't too bad. And it turns out one of my friends actually apparently did not order the tickets, so he didn't actually get to go. And then Ziggy like lost his, so he had to rush over and repurchase it. So we had to like save some seats. But we got good seats for Dice Tower Live. It was a good show. It was actually. I would probably say I liked the last year a little better, because they actually talked about their experiences at Gen Con more. This was more like a scripted show that they're trying to put on, but they were both good. The funniest part was I'm fairly certain it was unscripted. They were bringing out Alan Moon, who's the designer of Ticket to Ride, and apparently they were gonna like ask him questions about the new expansions for Ticket to Ride. But instead, he comes out, he grabs the microphone, and he starts doing a stand-up routine, which was Rodney Dangerfield-esque in style. And he ended up telling, like, just a joke, which stand-up comedians do not do anymore. But, I mean, that in itself is bad, but the funny part was Tom Vassel's reaction to what was happening. Because this was not like a normal sort of family-friendly joke that this guy started telling. It was like a Catholic nun-style joke. Which is especially bad. Because, you know, Tom Vassell is a very religious guy. Like, he was running, like, the church service on Sunday morning and stuff like that. He's been a pastor for many years. So this guy comes out and starts telling this raunchy Catholic nun joke. And so Tom Vassell's face is just like buried in his hat during this whole thing, because Alan Moon starts, you know, he starts saying "damn" a bunch during the joke. It was involved in the joke, which is not horrible, but it's not something you ever hear on the Dice Tower, so it was kind of like, wow, this guy's really doing this. But then he ends it all with a F-bomb at the end of the joke, and man, oh man, like, again, the joke itself is not like, holy shit, it's so funny. Him telling the joke by itself is not, holy shit, that's funny. But him telling the joke on Dice Tower Live in front of Tom Vassell, that's what was funny. That's what was really funny. So I'm sure they'll put up the video at some point. They'll probably edit out the swears. But you know what he's saying now that I've told you. And it's freaking fun. It was the highlight of the show. Because it was very unexpected. Like, he didn't care to talk about Ticket to Ride at all. He just doesn't give a shit. He comes out and just tells this dirty joke. Not a dirty joke, but a swear-filled joke. It was very funny. It was a good show. It was a little long, but I enjoyed it. So on Friday, between the ending of Dice Tower Live and the beginning of True Grind, we wanted to try out TI4. We knew we did not have time for a full game, but we just wanted to play it to fill the time. And so it took a while to set up. Studs had never played before. We didn't really give him a rules rundown that much. It was not a game. It was just, let's just play around with it, you know, until we have to go. TI4 seems really good, very streamlined. I like a lot of what I see with TI4. Plenty of improvements made. It's still functionally the same exact game. Most of the rules are identical, but all, you know, the cards and different sort of mechanics are streamlined and fixed, and just a lot of little improvements have been made that just make it sort of it's the TI version to own at this point. There's really not much point to own TI3. And they're going to be coming out with expansions, and they incorporate some of TI3's expansions into TI4 in the base game, and so I'm really excited for the future of Twilight Imperium. It's good shit. So then we went to True Grind, and again, we really had no idea what to expect. We went through the seminar, but that didn't teach us anything about True Grind. So we get there, we talk to this guy out front who's like works for the company, and we explain that we're doing True Grind. We've never played anything before, and he's just like, "Oh wow, jumping right into the fire," and we're like, "Yeah." We're like, we have no token, we don't know what to do, and blah blah blah. And so he gives us a bunch of like treasure tokens, so that we can get like random pulls from the box, like the booster packs or whatever. He gives us like 6, so we get 6 tokens, which isn't incredible, but it was nice enough of him, I suppose, even though it doesn't like cost the company anything. And we did not really get any great shit. If we were doing True Dungeon, that would have been nice, but we're doing True Grind. And so, yeah, our time slot comes around, and we head into the back area. It's all very dark and curtained off and stuff like that, and there's like a handwritten sign that's like, True Grind this way. Whereas everything else has like these really nice signs. And it's especially bummed me out because I found out that the True Dungeon events that year were all based around and like written or something like that by Patrick Rothfuss. They were based on his Kingkiller Chronicles series. So there was like the Fae and stuff like that, and there was like the forest around Wayrest Tavern or something like that. Like it was completely supported by Patrick Rothfuss for the Kingkiller Chronicles, which is, you know, incredible fantasy series. And if that never happens again, I'm going to be really pissed that the one year that was happening, we got True Grind. But it is what it is. True Grind has there's no theme whatsoever. Like, there's nothing. So anyways, we get in there, we sit down, and we're like looking over these like sheets of paper and character sheets, and no one else is there. We don't know what to expect. In walks this guy, older dude, white hair, white beard. He had like his palette and character sheet around his neck already. Like, he looked like some grizzled paladin from some far off land. That's honestly what he looked like. He could have been a paladin. And so we explained to him that we are newbies. We've never done anything before. We have no idea what to do. We have no tokens, really. Like, we didn't even show him our shitty tokens because we were just embarrassed. And so he borrows us characters. He pulls out these like binders full of characters full of tokens. Like, honestly, hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of tokens. Like, it's really expensive. And so it doesn't really cost him to borrow it to us, right? It's in his better interest to borrow us good characters to help make it through. But he was very well prepared, to be honest. And so, let's see here. Ziggy was playing the Bard. Phil was playing the Fighter. Studs was playing the Cleric. Thomas was playing the Monk. And I played the Barbarian. I didn't really care what I played. And honestly, it doesn't really matter that much what you play. It's all kind of just shuffleboard. And some others arrived, and they're all discussing things, about what to do and loot and their builds and blah, blah, blah. And they're explaining stuff to us about how to play and what's going to happen and all these sorts of things. And they're discussing difficulty. And we decide we're going to play on normal because we're all new to the thing. And as it turns out, it doesn't really matter. So on and so forth. And so they end up having, I guess, 2 DMs. They have like a coach and 2 DMs, which seems excessive. But they have a coach who was there for most of the time before it started, and she was like working us through the thing and talking to us and blah, blah, blah. And then they have a DM who's like keeping track of all of our stats. because when you're in the event, all you have is like this little plastic sheet that has like your health, and you have to keep track of your own health, and it has like your special class abilities listed. But all your stats from like your loot, you know, stuff that your armor, your shield, things that give you bonuses and blah blah blah, that's all just filed away, and all, you know, all the stats are with the DM, so you don't really need to know about that or have it with you. As long as you can prove that you have the tokens to back it up, which, of course, the Paladin did. So really, most of us just went in carrying, like, our weapon. Because you take the weapon token and you put it in this little slider, and that's what you're sliding down. And so the DM, when they're checking the shuffleboard, and they're looking at, you know, who attacked, and they see who attacked with what weapon, so they can mark the damage and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, by the time of the session starting, we had no idea really what we were in for. We still didn't know what was going to happen, but, you know, it seemed like everyone there was really nice and friendly and cool, and so that was definitely a big help for the enjoyment. If there were assholes there who were just like, oh my god, you're new, oh god, this is gonna suck, it would have been a far worse experience, I think, for everyone. But the fact that everyone was nice and cool helped a lot, and they borrowed us characters, and they answered all of our questions, and all stuff like that. It was good. So we get in there, and you'll remember that I said True Dungeon was a series of rooms, and there's environments, and there's supposed to be, like, you know, characters, like actors that are role-playing there, and also, like, they construct these dungeons physically, or, you know, facsimiles of them. True Grind is a single room with just a bunch of tables, with, like, shuffleboard markings and stuff like that, and a couple chairs for the DMs to sit in. That's it. Like, you're just doing the combat, and so on and so forth. And there were 2 DMs. I thought there would only be 1, but I guess it's complicated enough that they had to have 2. So they are kind of... It's not just a shuffleboard, I guess. You're not just throwing things down constantly for no reason. The DM is sort of telling a sequence of events, and there are apparently decisions that the group is making as far as combat is concerned, whether, you know, you attack a group or you flee, or, you know, the DM gives you choices, and you know... Again, we only did it once. We have very limited experience, but apparently there are choices to be made as far as that adventure is concerned. So anyways, the Paladin is basically leading our group. He's the most vocal one. He's making the decisions. And I think we were fairly content, at least at the start, to just follow along with the Paladin. And so, alright, well, yeah, I mean, we're going to have to just kind of get into this, I guess. So the main DM, the most vocal one, was a nerdy-looking Asian dude, who we dubbed as Jeffrey. We don't know his real name. And so, yeah, Jeffrey was basically running the adventure, the True Grind. And he's very vocal, very outspoken guy, which I guess you'd have to be to running True Grind. And so the first encounter that we had was we encountered this, like, battlefield where a bunch of demons and devils are fighting each other. And so the Paladin, of course, wants to kill them both, and so he decides to start with the demons, I think. So we fight a bunch of demons, which was kind of... It almost seemed like a tutorial fight, which was nice for us. We cleaned up shop. We had no issues. I like shuffleboard. I like sliding stuff. I like dexterity games in general. I'm usually pretty decent in that. I enjoy it. So... let it be known that I did not hate True Grind. There was not much love for it amongst our group. But I think I probably disliked it the least. I would much prefer to do True Dungeon, but push came to shove. I mean, I might do it again, you know, given the opportunity. I guess, I mean, I probably never will do it again because no one else in the group wants to do it. But if they did, I don't think I'd really have a huge issue with it. I mean, there are way worse ways to spend my time. It does cost $30, but I thought it was humorous. And I like shuffleboard. But, yeah, I would prefer doing True Dungeon. Anyways. So, I enjoyed the shuffleboarding. So we kill the demons, right? And so then the paladin decides that, you know, of course he's going to kill the devils. They're just as evil. And so this is when Jeffrey decides that a righteous paladin killing both demons and devils, he broke his word against the devils, even though there was no arrangement ever made. We literally jumped into the battlefield and started fighting demons, and then we were going to start fighting devils. But Jeffrey decided to make this like some moral case that since we picked one side, apparently, even though we started with one side, the paladin feels bad for betraying this group that he had no allegiance to. It's bad DMing. Jeffrey was a bad DM. There's no way around it. It became a constant running joke that Jeffrey was a terrible DM. And in a normal D&D campaign, this would never be the case. This would never be allowed. And it was made known to us beforehand that True Grind is really... It's really just an event for people that like the shuffleboard aspect of it. That's it. Like, none of the people we were playing with who were extreme veterans, none of them only did True Grind. Like, they were all lovers of True Dungeon as well. They occasionally did True Grind just because it's half price and it's just combat, so it's like, oh, I got an itching for some more combat. You do True Grind. I think that was made clear to us. Fuck. But anyways, the game continued on, and most of it involved Jeffrey sort of making completely arbitrary decisions about who to attack, what to throw at us, and not making fun, but basically insulting the paladin, who, again, just this really nice older gentleman who comes in completely prepared. He was a very important gamer, which costs like $500 and gives you, these perks at Gen Con and stuff like that. So this guy's got a lot of money to throw around. He's been doing this for a long time. Really cool guy. Borrowed us all the characters, explained stuff to us. He walks into this True Grind, and Jeffrey just starts berating this guy. I feel like they didn't know each other, but, I mean, at one point he said to him, "You're a terrible paladin." Like, that's not something you say to this guy. It's just not right. It's like if I went up to my grandpa and I said, "You're a terrible grandpa." Like, that's horrible. He also told him to read his sheet, because I think Jeffrey was informed that there were... Yeah, he was informed that there were 5 new players that had never done anything before. And so I think that may have changed how Jeffrey ran things or something like that. So I think he thought that this guy was one of the new players, because he was like, he just kept saying, "Read your sheet." Because the paladin was trying to do something that apparently wasn't allowed because it was like a new version of it or something like that. And so he's like, "You're a new player, so I'll give you a pass this time, but read your sheet." And it's just like, oh my god, this guy's gonna snap. The other DM, because again, I said there were 2 DMs. The other DM was a much older gentleman who was very, very soft-spoken. Very soft-spoken. Very quiet. Which is not what you want in the true grind. Because all the true dungeon events are all happening in one large room. And there are also sound effects happening. So it's fairly a noisy environment. And so when the DM is soft-spoken and you can't hear him, that's sometimes a problem. A lot of the times, I was just following the other's lead, like, oh, they're attacking this guy, good, I'll attack him too, blah, blah, blah. But then it comes up that, apparently for one turn only, this tiefling or whatever that we were fighting was, for some reason, invincible against melee, or something like that, and you had to use a ranged weapon. And you actually have to physically swap out your token when you do that. And I did not hear this really quiet DM say, oh, melee is immune, you have to use ranged weapon. And I didn't hear that, and so I shot a melee, and he's just like, they were like, no melee, man, it's ranged. And I'm like, what the? Nobody's saying shit. So yeah, the most of the event was owned by Jeffrey. The other guy was just in the corner speaking quietly. Anyways. Really, the major problem, I think what everyone had the major problem with, we get to this point, and we're along, while we're doing this adventure, again, it's a combat hack fest. We're killing pretty much everything in sight, right? Because we're told that it's just combat one after another over and over and over and over. And so we all figured that, okay, we're just killing everything in sight. That's what we're doing. We're doing combat. We're not trying to run away from stuff or not fight things that we can fight. We're fighting stuff. And so it gets to the point where we come across this, like, sorcerer or something like that. Some sort of spellcast. I think it was like some witch or, I don't know. She was presented to be very powerful. We're like, all right, we're just going to kick her ass. Because the paladin wanted to kick her ass, and we were following the paladin, so we were going to kick her ass. So we start fighting her, we're shooting down the shuffleboard, blah, blah, blah. And Jeffrey turns to Thomas, and he's like, you feel unimaginable pain, you take 9,999 points of damage, and you die in excruciating, horrifying pain. And that was the end. That was the end for Thomas. He was done. He was done. And sure enough, one by one, all of us died to 9,999 points of damage, one by one. We all died instantly. No chance of stopping it. And even the guy that had started attacking this witch, and then, like, after round one, he's like, I stop attacking. I don't attack her. Even he dies as well. Just everybody. There were 4 people that sat out, like, entirely. And so they got to go on. But we were all dead. So they continue onwards. And the, basically how it worked is, the DM is talking, and he's revealing, like, the new scene and stuff. And, they pull off the shuffleboard panel, and they reveal a new one, and there's, like, a new enemy shown there and stuff like that. And so they move on, and they pull off the shuffleboard panel, and they reveal a big gazebo. And so immediately, 2 of the guys that have done this, like, every single year, they're veterans, they immediately shout, gazebo! And they rush over to their backpacks and start rifling through their tokens. Which, of course, most of us just seemed hilarious. But I'll explain the inside joke because I explained it to the others. So way back in D&D history, there was a game going on, and the DM was describing to his players the scene that they were encountering in some sort of wilderness, and he mentioned that there was a gazebo there. Okay. And one of the players had no idea what a gazebo was. He had never apparently heard that term. So he thought it was like a D&D monster. He thought it was like some fantasy creature, some horrifying creature. And so he said to the DM, I attack the gazebo. And so the DM, of course, ran with it, because that's what a good DM does. and he rolled for it or whatever, and he said that the gazebo devours you. So the guy was devoured by the horrifying gazebo. And so since then, it's always been just kind of an inside joke in D&D about the gazebo being an actual monster. And so I thought it was actually interesting, humorous at the time. Made even more humorous by the fact that these two grown men were rushing over to their backpacks of tokens, shouting, "Gazebo!" As it turns out, they had a token, they had an item, a weapon. It was like a +3 dire sling of gazebo slain. And so basically if they used it and they shot it down the shuffleboard and they got it in just the small little crit box, very small area, it would take a lot of luck and skill to get, the gazebo would die instantly, which is probably pretty good. I mean, they were very excited. As it turns out, the gazebo kind of wiped the floor with them. One guy got sent off. Actually, I think 3 of them died, and one of the guys got sent off to this maze. And so the DM actually pulled out like a book of mazes, like children's mazes. It was ranked, like the maze that Jeffrey gave him was ranked like 1 star, like easy mode or something like that. And the guy could not do it, and he's just like, he gave up. He literally just gave up in the maze, and he died. It's just fun. It's funny to remember, I think. It's funny to talk about. That whole sequence of events. That entire hour was just funny stuff. And so, yeah, we all died. We all got 1 treasure just for... Yeah, I saw the maze. It didn't look that hard. I mean, maybe the guy's just not good at mazes. He was the only one that actually did it. And he said, he's like, I mean, have you seen this maze? Did you do this? I don't know. It was like a little unicorn rainbow maze for kids. But maybe it was really difficult. I don't know. I'm not going to judge the guy. He's a veteran of True Grind. Anyways. So yeah, we all got 1 pity treasure, but that was pretty much it. That was it, and we all left, and that was the end of True Grind. Oh no, we got 1 treasure, and then we got 1 random pull, which also ended up being pretty shitty. So it takes a while. Really, it takes a lot of money. It's kind of a pay-to-win system, but the True Dungeon itself, on normal difficulty, if you just want to experience the True Dungeon akin to a escape room, like, you don't need any tokens. You can just show up and do it. They'll give you the stuff you need to do it. But True Grind is really for those people that have hundreds and hundreds of tokens. They do True Dungeon multiple times every year. They just love the shuffleboard combat. It really wasn't for us. But, I mean, I thought it was okay. So yeah, next year we're going to try to do the True Dungeon. I hope it has a very similarly themed... It's a very similar themed year. Maybe get Brandon Sanderson to design something with like the Stormlight Chronicles or something. I mean, that would be pretty good. But maybe that's a little too out there. Patrick Roth, the King Killer Chronicles, they have the Fae and stuff, and it's all very dark. They want stuff that's dark, I guess. Okay, what else? What else? I think that was pretty much it for Friday. Again, we did some gaming intermittently here and there. Saturday. Okay, yeah, Saturday we had a play test. So Saturday we went to this thing called I want to say it was called Open Exposure or something like that. Basically, you show up, you get a ticket, and you basically grab a seat at a table with a designer of a game that they are playtesting. And so you get to learn the game from the designer himself or herself, and you play the game and then you give sort of feedback, and they ask you how you felt about it, and blah blah blah. And so it's a chance to playtest a new game that's in development, and it could be some hot new thing that's going to be on Kickstarter, or it could be just some guy that really he made his first game and he wants to get it out there and blah blah blah, and so you can kind of help him along. It's a chance to play something brand new for free with the designer, which is pretty cool. And so we pretty much took the only thing that was 4 or 5 players, so we could have every seat. It was a game called Men of Parts, which I think is a terrible title. But it's a very, very light card game based in the sort of Shakespearean theater era, blah, blah, blah. And this is not really my style of card game. Again, I don't really like light games in general, but it's very take that. It's very quick paced, and you're trying to fill out sort of a tableau of actors. And so you're trying to take these cards from this deck, and you're trying to get them in your tableau so you can have a lot of points and blah blah blah. But everybody has these hands of cards that are basically just fuck you cards, where they're either like, they're claiming that actor is actually a woman, and so women can't be actors at the time, so that card gets thrown out, or you lose your turn for that turn, or they just take the actor, or they dump it in the discard pile, all sorts of cards like that. And so you're just going around, you're getting more cards, and you're trying to fill your tableau, and people are fucking with everybody, and it's just all around fuckery. Again, it's very light, it's very take that, screw your neighbor style gameplay. It was decent. It probably wouldn't be something I'd ever purchase, but I'm glad I didn't have like a bad experience where I had to like lie to this guy's face about how shitty shitty the game was and blah blah blah. It was decent. It was decent. The guy seemed nice and genuine enough, and so it was a good experience. I wouldn't mind doing that every year. I'm glad that it wasn't like a 2-hour Euro game that was really just boring and shit, and it's just like, oh my god. It was quick enough, and it was all right. Then later on we had Artemis, which we also did last year. This was in a different location. It was a slightly better setup. We only had 4 of the 7 tickets, so we knew 3 were going to be strangers. And I thought they were going to be just some punk kids again, or some, who knows what. Really, who knows what could come up. But it was actually pretty good. We had sort of this southern dad and his 2 teenage daughters. Oh, hold up. Okay. And they had apparently played before, which was pretty good. The dad took over as captain, which I was okay with, because I really didn't know anything. And he knew some stuff, which helped out. And so, yeah, we all had a pretty good time with it. It's fairly decent fun when you have a captain that knows what they're doing and you're actually accomplishing stuff. I think we only won one of the scenarios that we did, but I think we all had a pretty good time with it. We'll probably do it again next year. There are some other simulators there, like Starship Horizons, that I wouldn't mind trying as well. But yeah, we'll try to make a simulator every year, because that's a very con thing to do. It's not something you'd really ever do on your own, but it's pretty good at a con. That was pretty much it. We played a final game of Vast, I think, before Artemis. But yeah, that's pretty much all she wrote for Gen Con. It was a pretty good year. I enjoyed myself quite a bit. The suite probably could have gotten a bit more use than it did, but the fact is, when you're at Gen Con, you're there for the entire day. You're not going to leave at all until you're done, which is going to be later at night. And then, you're tired from a whole day of conning, and so there's not a whole lot of time for gaming, but it is what it is. The fuckery at the hotel was annoying, but that's all right, I guess. Second place in the coup tournament, that was pretty exciting. I got a bunch of new games to play. TI4 I'm really excited to have a full game of. Wasteland Express seems really cool. But yeah, like I said, Gen Con is just really a wonderful experience. I highly recommend it. If you're within 4 or 5 hours of Indianapolis, even if you can only get there for a couple days, there's just so much there to do. All the people are really cool. I mean, if you're listening, if you're watching this channel, I assume you're a bit of a nerd. I'm just gonna go out there and assume that. And so there's stuff for Gen Con for you. You can learn how to play any game you want. There will be people who will be more than pleased to teach you. You could even do some RPG stuff. You can do the bridge simulators. They have like knitting classes. You could make your own chainmail. I mean, there's so many events to do there. It's really wonderful. Really wonderful stuff. So I look forward to next year. Can't wait. Even though it's the 51st year now. 50 year was a big milestone. Although it really didn't matter. It just meant that there were more people there. So we'll see how the numbers are going to differ for the 51st year. But board gaming and all that is growing, so who knows? Who knows? It was definitely pretty crowded. There's a lot of people there. All right, so I've talked for over 2 hours now. This was a very long hang with Mangg, but a lot happened. A lot happened. So, check out the Kowloon Walled City video tomorrow over on the Exploring series. This week we're gonna, bring it back up to full speed with some more Morrowind, maybe some Zelda, maybe some other stuff. That Hellblade game looks pretty interesting. Who knows? But for now, my name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg, and I'll see you fine folks next week.